Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of Talk Landscape. We are super excited that you all are here tuning in live today for Talk Landscape episode 11, where we are talking about what climate leadership means for women. What's really cool about this episode is that we are having this conversation just days after International Women's Day, which happened on March 8th, and the GLF every year for International Women's Day comes out with a women's campaign where we highlight several incredible women who are doing amazing work for the environment all across the globe. And this year for this episode, we are inviting back two wonderful women who were part of previous year's campaigns. What is also really special about the timing of this year is that the GLF, in conjunction with our 8 Women campaign from this year, is launching a year-long campaign called GLF Women, where we're going to be highlighting incredible women and their work, inviting speakers to different panels and events that we'll be hosting throughout all of this upcoming year. So to kickstart all of this greatness, we are inviting two really amazing women today onto this episode. First, I'll introduce you all here to Subhra Bhattacharjee. She is the Director General of the Forest Stewardship Council International. She has over 23 years of experience in sustainable development, particularly in climate, environment work, and helping to alleviate poverty is a huge goal of hers. She has a proven track record in developing programming and policy across a wide range of contexts, including protracted crises and highly politicized environments. She's worked for the United Nations, she's worked for academia and the private sector, and now again is the CEO of the Forest Stewardship Council. Subhra, would you like to say a quick hello?
Hi, Eva. Hello to your audience. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Subhra. I would also like to introduce you all to Eva, who also goes by Kandi, Makandi. She is just so incredible. She is a multi-award winning youth leader. She focuses on child-centered environmentalism, and she's passionate about community development. She has studied community development and peace and conflict management. And in 2020, she founded a really amazing organization in her community called Light on a Hill, otherwise known as LOA, in Meru, Kenya. So she's doing a really amazing work in her community. Kandi, would you like to say a quick hello?
Hello, thank you so much, Eva. So glad to be here. Thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you both so much. And just remember, for all of you who are here watching live, we do have a chat function here. So please feel free if any point throughout the conversation you have questions for Subhra, for Kandi, for both, or just generally related to the topic of women in leadership in climate and environmental topics, please feel free to pop your questions in the chat and we will pepper those into the conversation. So just to begin, it would be amazing. I know I've done some brief introductions of you both, but maybe over to you, Subhra, if you just wanted to share a little bit more about yourself with your experience in policy and sustainable development, and just a little bit about where you're from, what even inspired you to begin down this path of environmentalism and leadership.
Thank you, Eva. Such a pleasure to be on here with Kandi. I come from India, and growing up in India in the late 1970s, 1980s, in a middle-class family, poverty used to be very visible to us. In the slums, on the roadside, we saw poverty up front. And like many of my generation, we carry a dream of a poverty-free India. Growing up, I studied economics, and when you study even a little bit of economic history, you quickly begin to see that poverty is not just a lack of income, but deeply social and political. So it was that knowing which took me into sustainable development, and it was, say, the mid to late 90s is when I got actively involved in studying how environmental factors affect human well-being, and that is when climate change became very big on my mindscape. Subsequently, of course, I did a PhD partly in environmental economics and worked for the UN on sustainable development. But through the process of working, for instance, on policy issues for the Reserve Bank of India, which is India's central bank, and then for the UN, it was very clear to me that economics, policy, sustainable development These are all very political, and you cannot separate the economic from the social and the environment. That's why FSC's mission resonates so closely with me, because FSC sees forests as an intersection of economic, environmental, and social interests. In FSC, we recognize that to keep forests healthy and resilient, to keep forests even standing, we will need to resolve those conflicting interests through dialogue. That's what brings me here.
Thank you so much, Subhra, for sharing. Absolutely, yes. Everything is so interconnected when it comes to these huge thematic areas of economics, environmental issues, social issues, and conflicts. Like, that's beautiful that your work really threads together all of those things and brings awareness to how they overlap. I would love to ask you more about your work with the FSC, but first to jump back over to Kandi, it would be amazing if maybe you could share a little bit more about yourself as well, where you're from, what kind of inspired you on this path to found this organization and study what you've studied. Over to you if you'd like to share.
Thank you, Eva. Thank you, Subhra. That's such a beautiful background to just know you. Okay, for me, as you heard, my name is Kandi, and I'm a very passionate community developer, and I would say a social change agent. So basically, my work began, and what inspired who I am. I was born and raised in Meru, Kenya, which is a farming community. We are defined by our farming. So agriculture is a backbone to our livelihoods and who we are as a community. And also, I had a privilege to be raised by farmers and also people who really cared about their community. And by saying people, I mean, yes, a better part of my childhood was raised by my grandma, who was a teacher, very passionate teacher, and I saw her. I got to go through her school. I got my education through a school she founded in our village to empower communities through good education, quality education, but affordable education after her retirement. So, growing up around such a woman allowed me to see that, oh, really, women can lead and also they can serve their communities and still carry so many hats, but still have their communities at heart. So, I got to have, I would say, a beautiful inspiration growing up and seeing how much agriculture meant to my community and to my parents and people around us, and just seeing that relationship between people, land, and basically the community really inspired my journey. And growing up now, I had a great burden to serve. And education also allowed me to study something that would allow me to serve people, that is community development for my undergrad. And I got the opportunity to work in different communities in Kenya. But now in 2020, I think was not in a very good space mentally, and this was an awakening for me. There was a huge drive for me to go back to my community and extend what I really love doing to them, because I saw and I had observed for a while the challenges that the different climate shocks were creating to my people and the devastation there. So, and also now tracing back to my childhood and the passion where it was all brewed from. I was like, I think there's something I can offer. I can be the change, or I can partner with my community to see how best hope cannot be lost. And that's how Light on a Hill was founded, which is more or less a metaphor of hope. So yeah, so basically that's where my work starts from, and it's beautiful just seeing how relationships, how everything is intertwined, just even from Shubra and even myself. It's there's so many things that define who we are and experiences. So basically that's where my work and what I love doing was born from. Yeah, thank you.
Oh, thank you for sharing, Kandi. And I love that story about your grandmother making that school and you got to be educated really directly through your family. And something that you both mentioned in different capacities is that you're now, working partially in the environmental world, but how it's so interconnected with other things. And what kind of initially brought you both into that was a love for community, for your people, wanting people to have, you know, proper access to education and resources, alleviating poverty, bringing community together. That's really beautiful. Thank you so much both for sharing. It's really a pleasure to have you both on. And as we dive deeper into what climate leadership means for you both, I think it would be important to address first how climate issues are impacting women today. As we're speaking about International Women's Day, a lot of women focusing on these issues. And I know, Subhra, that is something that you look at a lot with your research and your work. So I would love if you could share, kind of what you've learned in your journey in policy and sustainable development about how climate change is impacting women specifically, if there's anything you'd like to share.
Very briefly, climate change is not gender neutral. Women, especially women who come from poverty or deprived background, they are disproportionately affected by climate change. What's more, if we just look at numbers and look at the business as usual numbers, research shows that by 2050, 158 million women will be pushed under poverty, pushed below the poverty line on account of climate change. Now, when I say disproportionate, this number 158, which is the size of a small country, is 16 million more women than men would be pushed into poverty on account of climate change. If you look at numbers right now, over 47 million women are affected by food insecurity, one of the key impacts of climate change. So the question is why? Think of how does climate change manifest in our day-to-day lives? We see natural or climate-related disasters. When those disasters happen, women are typically less able to cope with them. They don't know what the resources are available and how to escape them. And in the aftermath of disasters, women, especially um, women who are not physically strong, say pregnant women, older women, they suffer disproportionately. I remember traveling to Sylhet, Bangladesh after a devastating flood. The flood affected people from the villages. They had been housed in a school which was made of concrete and several floors tall. There was no privacy. There were hundreds of women and, of course, men sharing the 10 or 15 toilets that are there in a school. Imagine women who are pregnant, close to giving birth, who might have had to give birth in those conditions, being in that confined space. When there is climate migration, women are likely to suffer high levels of gender based violence. We know that instances of femicide go up by 28% during affect, um, give rise to increased stillbirth. So, in many different ways, women are uniquely additionally impacted, and this impact is overlapping with other impacts because we know that the poorest are the most vulnerable to climate. I will stop here, but because when women have agency in addressing climate change, we can see great things happen as well, but that comes later.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Yes, thank you for sharing that context and from your lived experience, your travels, what you've seen, what you've researched. Very, very powerful sentiments. Kandi, I see you nodding along a lot, so I would love to give the floor to you for anything you'd like to comment on from what she shared, or any of your experiences, what you've seen at the community level related to how climate is impacting women.
Yeah, so I think from a statistic level and research level and also experience, I think Shubhra has really captured most of the things I'd share. Of course, and also to add on that, from a rural perspective and experience, of course, women are on the front line mostly to experience the shocks of climate and when there are disruptions in climate. For instance, we know that mostly women are in charge of providing care for their families, for food production, of course, and other roles that they play in their homes, in the community. So when, for instance, even just fetching water, so when there's a shift in this, and there's a drought or other unanticipated climate shocks, this means that there's a heavier burden to their daily duties, and this creates a huge strain on women. And just from, I know it's it's heartbreaking to think of, but just to say that also all these changes, I think the climate change has also been an awakening and a motivator from a hopeful side to women like myself and Shubhra and you, Ava, to be here today to be the change, because I mean, it's not all hopeless at the end of it. So it's created a revolution or a new generation of women who want to be the change and to even talk of these challenges that women youth face due to climate change and find solutions even from talks such as this that we're having today. So yeah.
Yes, no, absolutely. And on that note, I would love to follow up with you, Kandi, for those tuning in today to learn a bit more about LOA. And you're working with young boys and girls, serving the community at large. But I would love to, if you would like to share more about LOA and the way that you're kind of inspiring young women, young students at large to kind of be the next generation of leaders. Obviously, you're a young female leader doing amazing work in your community, but you're also inspiring the next generation. If you'd like to share any of the examples of what you're doing and what you're hopeful for this next generation in Meru and beyond.
Yeah. Thank you. I think my work holds a very dear place in my heart. And yeah, so I get the privilege to work with kids and for kids and learn from them, teach them as their teacher, environmental teacher. And I would say when I began this, it's been a lesson for me. It's been a journey of learning because when I began, I thought I was the big person, the adult who was coming to teach kids who are just beneficiaries in this whole space of climate action. But I've been greatly challenged on this because through my work, now going to 6 years, I've been challenged to be more curious by kids who are always curious, asking so many questions, and who are so happy to share that, Teacher Kandi, please come see my plant grew, or I have developed like these earrings. They developed this from waste, like plastics. They crocheted some plastics and created beautiful earrings. And just seeing that actually they are not on the sideline, they're actually actors in this space, and getting to experience that from a very personal level, and uh, now getting to also tell the world that we need we need to create inclusive spaces where kids are actually not just side observers or people who will catch up with this whole story or climate action, but actually they are players and they have such a beautiful role to play because more or less our work is focused on creating lived experiences in terms of we're trying to shift from just focusing education from a place of textbooks, but now bringing in experiential learning for children. And we've seen this to be very effective in that from the experienced learning, creative learning, they get to own and grow gradually, care for their planet, for their land, and maybe growing up of many of my peers, if you speak of agriculture or land, it's more or less uh, not a nice experience for them or memory because, for instance, on holidays, most of us were expected to go work on farm, like in their farms, like that. Those are things that my mom experienced, my peers experienced, and now it seems like more of a punishment if you speak of farming. So I'm trying to, through Laura's work, we're trying to show that and also allow kids to experience if it's working with land in a fun way and in a way that they feel and know that they are part of it and that land is their friend. It's not like a punishment that they need to do over holidays, but it's something that they get to learn so much from through now allowing them to just experience a seed growing and just learning the whole science in a very experienced way of growth and maybe the challenges that come in. Maybe sometimes rains don't show up. How do we adapt to that? And this even evokes their creativity, their innovation. So and also from some of the activities we carry out, like community cleanups, now getting to show them that these are not just waste, but they're things that you can upcycle to create valuable things like PCR rings and other beautiful things that they get to create. Been shocked at how creative kids can be if given a chance to just immerse fully in their childhood and in their creativity. So basically, that's what we do. We just allow kids to be kids through and experience nature from a very lived place through nature walks, through scavenger hunts. It's beautiful that Evie is here and she's gotten to experience that with us. And yeah, so we just get to experience nature from a very personal place, and from that gradually we've seen them love nature and be stewards of it through now even encouraging their parents, their neighbors, their siblings to do the same for nature. So basically that's our work. I hope I've explained it in the best way possible. Sometimes I can use so many words and lose out on what I'm explaining. So, yeah.
No, that was wonderful. Thank you so much, Kandi. And yeah, you're really out there shifting narratives. A lot of what you talked about, there's been like a perception now that agriculture is this sort of way, or maybe that leadership has to look like standing in front of a room, but really you are teaching people leadership by the lived experience in their bodies, in their communities, having respect for the land and for what it provides, and teaching young girls and boys to lead in the next generation from the community level. That's really beautiful. Thank you for sharing. Back over to you, Subhra. I think a lot of what we talk about with women in leadership, that you're the CEO of a very large organization, is some of the systemic barriers that come up for women in leadership, whether that be like gender biases, marginalization, fewer seats at the table for opportunities. I'd be curious if any of those things that you would like to share either on a personal level or with some of your colleagues. I know some of the founders of FSC were women, kind of sharing a bit of that story of women in leadership in the climate realm and what that's looked like in your experience.
Thank you. Structural barriers to women in leadership is quite well studied, and we know what are those factors. The fact that workplaces are designed, built with men as the default, that patriarchal norms define leadership in a certain way that leads to women being perceived differently. women being judged differently. So that is fairly well studied, that exists. If we were to broaden the definition or what leadership looks like, then a different world emerges. And that you heard in Kandi's narrative. On one hand, if you were to go on LinkedIn and read the International Women's Day post of Lina Ramon, Lina Ramon, our uh, Director of Technology and Innovation, she puts out a very interesting story that when she got her position, she had to fight with a perception that she got her position because she's a woman, which put enormous pressure on her to prove herself, to do much more for every single thing to earn that credibility. Credibility did not come with the position. That is there. On the other hand, especially in the climate context in the forest sector, I see numerous instances of leadership that is not necessarily tied to a position. So let me give you a few examples. In FSC, Marta Nunez is an anthropologist and a feminist from Ecuador who is working and on advocating for women's rights and climate justice. She is one of the founders of FSC. That is leadership in action. She was part of FSC's board. But on a day to day basis, through her work, she advances leadership. Dr. Leonie van der Maassen is one of the earliest FSC members. She is over 98 years old. She's a geomorphologist, a geologist, and an advocate for climate action, and still active. That is leadership. Hindu Umaru Ibrahim, an indigenous person from the Mbororo tribe of Chad. They are pastoralists. She's an activist and a leader for indigenous rights and climate action. She's young, barely 40, maybe less. And she alone and in alliance has achieved a space for dialogue on indigenous rights in many forums where they did not exist before. That is leadership. If you think about it, the young people who participated in the Fridays for Future movement, they pretty much brought climate change into the forefront of global policy discourse without holding any positions, and that is climate change. And I think it's important to celebrate all of these at the same time. When it comes to positions, holding positions in FSC, we have a board of directors consisting of 12 directors. 5 of the 12 members of the board of directors are women. The Policy and Standards Committee of FSC, which is one of the most important technical committees, is chaired by a woman who started as an intern with FSC and built her skills and her profile to the extent that she is chairing the Policy and Standards Committee. So I see a lot of possibility here, both in holding positions and in exercising leadership in many different ways.
Thank you so much, Subhra, for sharing that. And I love seeing the smile and the joy and the pride and the excitement as you're sharing about the accomplishments of these other women. And I really feel like that embodies what women's leadership can offer, which obviously is very diverse and looks different in different contexts. But the fact that as a CEO of an organization, and I ask you about women's leadership, you talk mostly about the other women that you work with and highlighting their accomplishments. I think that's really beautiful and speaks really highly of your character, your organization, and what women's leadership often embodies. Leaning off of that, I would love to ask you both, what shifts in thinking or doing, you touched on some of this just now, Subhra, But what shifts in thinking you're doing do you think are important? Do you believe are necessary to strengthen women's role in leadership? Maybe over to you, Kandi, if you'd like to share first, if anything comes to mind. That could be at the community level, through education, in organization creating.
If I got your question correctly, what should shift or
To strengthen women's role in leadership, or to open more doors of possibility even.
yeah, for sure. Thank you. I think already the shift is beginning from even just listening to Shubhra. Just it's beautiful seeing how women are empowering other women, and I think that's something. It's just see the power in that. Like I can't even overemphasize it. And more also, I think there's so many unsung heroes in the rural places, the community levels. There's so many women taking up the leadership roles. It's just that they are informal, and that means that most times they go unseen or uncelebrated. So if we can have spaces that would amplify these women, give them spaces to tell their story, even just cover their story, even in such platforms, like people get to learn about the beautiful work that Shubra is doing, and myself as well, and you, Ava, and also giving them the boost, because sometimes, most times, we're doing so much at the community level, but with very limited resources. And in resources, it's not just limited to finances, but also in being recognized by institutions. If it's for the indigenous peoples, we have very brilliant women with amazing skills in traditional. They are carrying traditional ecology knowledge throughout the generations. They are preserving their seeds. There's so much that they're educating children. So what lacks is maybe that bridge to allow them to for their work to be justified, I would say, for lack of maybe the appropriate word, but to just recognize that these are efforts that can work together with and be represented in spaces that they are yet to be represented. For instance, maybe most of the times what has happened is the spaces that have been mostly that maybe where policies are made, it's been constantly the same institutions covering mostly the same voices. And I say this very carefully, but how about we bring in the artists, the indigenous women, the young people working with children, even the children themselves that are creating that maybe even have beautiful poems. I do have those kids who can shift a whole room with a poem that they came up with. So just providing those spaces for these women who are in rural areas and in other spaces, maybe in their art rooms and all that, that have not yet been amplified enough to encourage other women and other young leaders, other local actors to just know that their voices matter and they are valued, and there's someone putting an intention to enabling them to be heard and appreciated. So yeah.
That is such a wonderful message. Thank you, Kandi. And you're really just shining a light on the fact that women are already leading, and there are youth that are already leading. This leadership exists. It's just opening our eyes to see it and using positions of power to invite people, whether or not they're in rural spaces, maybe indigenous women, all sorts of women of different walks of life and of different ages, to have a platform to share their leadership on a broader scale for more ears to hear, more hearts to be touched. Thank you for sharing that. That was really powerful. Shubhra, would you like to add anything to that sentiment of ways that you think women's roles in leadership could be strengthened or more doors of opportunity could be opened?
Yes. So you talked about shifts in thinking. I think the primary thing we have to accept is that we are all women, men, feminists, non-feminists, we are all conditioned by the same social patriarchal norms. We need to be vigilant. Just because one of us happens to be a feminist doesn't mean that we will not act in ways that disadvantage other women. So vigilance is needed. Second is the second shift in thinking is that we have to see men as allies. A lot of the discourse does not recognize that men are important allies in advancing gender equality, in advancing women's leadership. Most women who have achieved positions of leadership can look back to either a father who pushed them to be an achiever, brother who was there at the right time, grandfather, a husband, a partner. Men matter, a friend. So their allyship needs to be recognized and celebrated. Third is the more women we have in leadership positions, the more we normalize it. Then women in leadership positions will not face the pressure of being perfect. Can be normal, flawed human beings who are leading to the best of their ability. We need more women in this positions. Finally, we need a shift in our understanding of what leadership behavior looks like. Is leadership always assertion and dominance, or is it relational? Is women or is leadership always about knowing exactly what to do, that surety, or is it also more exploratory, being able to take the risk? Is it more singular or is it more participatory? So these are all shifts that I see that are essential, not just for increasing the representation of women in leadership, but also increasing the representation of other marginalized groups, minorities, persons with disabilities, um, indigenous peoples, those who are underrepresented in leadership positions.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Shubhra. I love what you said. We've been speaking about that a lot at the GLF about what is leadership and how to reimagine that, talking about the dominance versus relationality, someone who's speaking over versus speaking with and inviting in. And that could look like anyone. That could be women in leadership, that could be indigenous folks in leadership, that could be youth in leadership, that could be men in leadership, but just that way of shifting our thinking about how leadership can be portrayed and invite in spaces is really powerful. I'm curious if either of you have any additional things you'd like to add on notes of encouragement for maybe other women or other folks in general who might be watching this live or later, for people wanting to deepen or broaden their sort of climate impact, their community building impact. If there's other tools, resources, ideas, words of inspiration, maybe over to either of you that feels inspired to share first.
Kandi, you want to go first? Or shall I? You tell me.
Please go, Shubhra. As
Look at us
yeah.
sharing space.
Okay.
I love it. Over to you, Shubhra.
So my first thought would be build alliances, be an ally. Because big change is never achieved alone. Your allies, other women, like-minded women, can celebrate with you during your successes, be there for you during hard times. And in this context, I really want to celebrate Eleanor Fournier Toombs, my friend and former colleague, a data scientist, one of 100 brilliant women in AI, currently serving as the Chief AI Officer of the state of New York. We've known each other for more than a decade, cheered each other on through our career, been there during each other's hard times. Allyship matters. The second, I would say, encourage, empower, mentor, and open doors for other women. Nobody is too young or too old to do that. I want to recognize, for instance, Abha Prasad, who was my boss in the Reserve Bank of India, one of the best bosses I've had, extremely demanding, having very high standards, and alongside someone who cared deeply about people who were men and women. She encouraged us, she promoted us, she positioned us well. And everything that I have learned about being a good boss, I have learned from Abha. Currently living in the US and working for the World Bank. If you are a mother, if you're a parent, push your daughters to do better. Everything I am, I would like to say 90% of it I owe to my parents. Especially want to call out my mother, Kalpana Bhattacharjee, who does not just encourage me, but people women my age or younger. She will talk to you, she'll push you to do better, she will encourage you, she will listen to you, unburden yourself, and literally push you out the door to go bigger things. Be that parent. Finally, I would say normalize climate conversation, normalize being climate conscious, and model the fact that to be a climate advocate doesn't mean you have a joyless, boring life. You could be someone who does not eat meat and yet loves food. You could be someone who does not fly much or flies less than you could and yet knows how to have a good time. You could dress beautifully. I mean, look at Kandi with her jewelry. Would anyone say that she's not a fun person? You could be out partying, you could be out dancing, you could be stylish, and yet have a very climate conscious life. Normalize that.
Oh, Subhra, you're giving me chills. I love this. Thank you. Yes, the sentiment of alliances, mentorship, creating space for others, shouting out others, inviting in love. So much of what even the way you've been speaking on this phone call invites to that, both of you, just like recognizing the efforts of others, of your grandparents, of your mother, of the people that you work alongside, young, old. That really is climate leadership and women's leadership in action. Very beautiful. Kandi, is there anything you would like to add on that for encouragement you would give to others who might want to broaden, deepen their impact?
Let me just acknowledge what Shubhra said. Thank you so much. I think I was thinking about this talk, and it's beautiful that I think you've affirmed some of the things I really wanted to say, and I was a bit scared that I would say them and it's too much. But on Sunday, which was International Women's Day, I was just thinking about how far we've come as Loa, and truly, I was talking to my husband, and we were just recounting that Loa, I think the more we do things, we just take them for granted. And now I think International Women's Day is just something that maybe some people feel, oh, women want too much of attention or whatnot. But for us, it was very personal, especially through our work. And I'd say that, first of all, uh, just let me just copy Shubra and just say that I truly appreciate my husband, who has been so supportive with me and my work, and sacrifice, I think, took in the big burden to work as I figured out Light on a Hill. And that gave me the confidence to just be there full time and all that. And just now going back to how far we've come, uh, we've had women who have mentioned our names in offices and in places we had no idea existed, and those spaces opened up doors we could have not imagined existed and have truly uplifted our work. Even from the first time, I have this amazing cousin called Maureen who did that, and we got our first partnership. I remember into 2021, I was applying for a GLF steward, and Irini was there. And of course, the first time I never got in, but I got a second chance. And them telling me why they're like, just loved um, how happy or how illuminate so much joy. And also your work mattered. At that time, I did not believe in my work because we were still very young, and I had received, unfortunately or fortunately, many no's that had left me second guessing my work. So as you can see, women have really shaped and our work and who I am as Kandi, and also my mom housing me as I do my work in Meru. Like, they're just written everywhere, and also not to mention, as Shubra said, the alliance is just acknowledging men not as enemies but as allies in this work of us leading and everything else that we are advocating for, and other, of course, other aspects of society that sometimes you feel maybe we can do this alone. No, we can't. And I just love how the emphasis has been placed on just working together, holding each other's hands, the collaboration. So my encouragement would be maybe from a lesson I've learned from children. I'm a big advocate of hope. So I think what I've seen is hope is cultivated just like a plant. So it's cultivated through intentional actions. For instance, if it's me, I know, or how, like maybe if it's Ava, Kandi exists and I think should really benefit from this platform speaking. And I'm like, you know what, we will have her. And Shubra, you've really acknowledged your former boss and other beautiful women you work with. I mean, just being intentional about that. And also, sometimes as there's all this anxiety around climate and the world and the planet, it's justified, but that should not lose our focus and not show us. I think I've seen an antidote in action to anxiety, like with action. When you act on something, even if it's conscious living. For instance, previously I was a big shopper of clothes like that I did not need, but there are these conversations of young people who are really advocating for conscious living and all that, and that has really encouraged me and actually challenged me to be more conscious in my living. So what I'm trying to say is everything that everyone is working towards, that with intention to support climate or even humanity, matters. Maybe at that point you feel that it doesn't, but you have no idea who it's impacting, whether it's through your art, through AI, through your farming. I mean, you get to get food because you farm. Um, Through your leadership, I'm really encouraged that there are CEOs like Shubra, like maybe what the world tells us you need to be really, I don't know what, so that you can be respected. So um, I come out of here really encouraged, and also hoping to encourage a young person somewhere trying to create change. It matters, and there are all those people weaving around the spaces that will allow you to, and your voice and whatever you're doing, to have meaning. And please don't give up. And I think there's good in this world. It is there. It's dark, but there's hope for a better world, because there are small actions happening everywhere. However minute they may be, I think that will all come together to something very beautiful one day in the world that we hope to have someday. So, yeah.
Thank you so much, Kandi. Yes, I love your messages of hope. And I'm, on a personal note, very grateful that I've had the opportunity to meet you in person and get to experience your joy and your positivity, and the way that you give to your community has inspired me a lot. And one day, hopefully, Shubhra, we can get to connect in person
Yeah.
as well. And it's just really just such a pleasure to hear from you both, and just, yeah, reimagining what leadership can look like outside of just the one idea that we're told is a leader when we're in second grade or whatever that may be. And that conscious living that both of you mentioned, those small acts, is also leadership within oneself. And that's reflected out and is picked up, maybe if you start shopping less, your sister starts shopping less, those sort of like small things ripple out. And so there's so many ways to embody positive leadership as women, and just as people, as human beings in general. um, as we start to wrap up this conversation, I would love, to ask you on a final note, to both of you, maybe over to you first, Shubhra. What is like your vision for Earth regarding the state of the planet and leadership, maybe even institutional leadership, since you work for such a large institution, and collective action? Like what is your vision moving forward? What would bring you hope and joy? And yeah, would just love to hear any final words that you have.
First and foremost, a world without extreme poverty,
Mm.
a world that has not just survived, but has emerged safe from the climate crisis, a world where values of care, solidarity, stewardship are the norm and not the exception, where solidarity for fellow humans and for life on Earth is built into our governance systems.
Mm.
It is a world where we have found a way to coexist in harmony with nature, but not just in harmony, in synergy with nature.
Mm.
Nature is part of our well being, and that is accepted. It is a world where modernity coexists with the basic human urge for justice and solidarity.
Mm.
That for me would be really good. Not the utopia, but if I live to see a part of that world, I would be a very happy person.
Thank you. I would also be very happy in that world. Thank you, Shubhra. That's beautiful. Kandi, is there any last things you'd like to add on your future vision for the Earth, for leadership, collective action, the planet?
Um, yes, of course, totally agree with the bit of care and the synergy working together. I'm a big advocate of love and kindness. So, of course, that was now going back to values, and also a future where children grow up truly owning up that they are stewards and they're actors of the environment and they love it, and not just spectators from it. And a future that, or a planet or a world that is, we are kind to one another and we put people, humanity above profits, because I think we've capitalized so much and forgotten the basics of life. So that world that really loves and truly from a place of genuine love and intention. So, and where children are actually valued as players in, of course, not putting too much pressure, allowing them to be kids, but still just knowing that they also bring wisdom, and something they can contribute something to life. Yeah. So
Absolutely. Kids bring so much hope and like unbridled joy and love for the natural world, for people, for community. Um, Thank you both so much for the hope that you've brought to this conversation, for the critical eye, for the interest, for the engagement, for sharing your platform to also have gratitude for those who have brought you to be such wonderful women and leaders at the community level, at the international level, national, all of it. It's really inspiring. It's beautiful to share space with you all. I'm sure a lot of people watching live or watching back later will take away a lot from this conversation. So I just want to say, like, sincerely, thank you so much. I would encourage people watching to check out the Instagrams, the LinkedIns of these wonderful organizations. Like, check out Forest Stewardship Council, check out Light on a Hill. They're doing really cool work. It's very inspiring to me personally. And yeah, thank you all for watching. This has been a really lovely episode 11 of our Talk Landscape. We're excited to keep it going. So yeah, for those of you who are watching, who are interested in maybe tuning into future conversations, we always try to keep them interesting, engaging, bringing new, unique content and conversations, bringing in incredible voices. So check out some, oh, so fancy. You can check out our, our email newsletters here. If you wanted to scan the QR code, you can check out, this is called Talk Landscape. We do about an episode a month or so. So you can check out newsletters specifically for that. We do weekly features for our Think Landscape platform for stories from the community, from the world about environmental action. And we also have a news digest every single month. So thank you so much. Maybe we can bring back on everyone onto the screen for just a final wave goodbye before we log off. Sorry, I didn't realize that that would take over, but thank you so much to everyone.
Thank you, Eva, for inviting us. Such a pleasure meeting you. Pleasure meeting you too, Kandi.
Yeah.
I hope we get to meet in person sometime.
Yeah.
Oh, that would be so lovely.
Thank you so much.
Thank you all. Thank you all so much. Goodbye.